Well, welcome to our virtual learning sessions. We do a few sessions each semester as we are about 4 weeks away from our annual conference, which we're planning to have the largest conference that we've had. We're looking at around 500 participants. And if I'm not mistaken, Deb, we're over 100 posters this year.
Oh my gosh, yes we are. We received close to 200 submissions, and of the 200 submissions, we're going to have approximately 150 presenters.
Wow.
And
So
of I was going to say, and of that 150 though, only 30 received travel awards, so it was extremely competitive this year.
Oh wow. So with 150 poster presentations, I think this is absolutely perfect, the conversation that we're going to have tonight. So what do we do here on these virtual learning sessions? So our goal is to help you be more successful, more productive, and more effective in not only your academic, but also in your personal and professional life. And tonight is pretty cool because you don't have to just listen to my voice tonight. We have guest speakers tonight that will be taking over the screen here in just a second and walking us through poster presentations. So poster presentations are very unique because they create a unique challenge from a standpoint of the research that you've done, also the presentation of that research, but then also it kind of has that career fair feel where you have all this noise and all these people around and you're trying to have your voice be heard. So it just creates an interesting dynamic in the room. And we're going to touch bases on all of those aspects of the poster, building the poster, presenting the poster, and getting feedback on the poster. So one of the things that I wanted to make mention that we talked about last week for those that were on was the website. So it's LSMRCE.org. If you do make the mistake like I do sometimes and go to LSMCE.org, Deb has it pretty cool where it'll go directly, I want to say at the very top of LSMCE.org has the link to the LSMRCE.org. And what that is the Lewis Stokes Midwest Regional Center of Excellence, for those that don't know what that stands for. So if we have time at the end, we'll kind of go through that agenda one more time. All right, so I just wanted to make mention as we get ready for the poster presentation. Last week we talked about what this number 7 means. And the number 7 is very simple. It's 7 seconds to make a first impression. So not only do we want to do a lot of hard work and preparation for our poster presentations, but we only have a few seconds to really leave that lasting impression. And we want to do that right out the block. So we'll talk about some of that detail later. And last year we had this whole thing about icebreakers. So this year I thought I'll just keep it simple. It's brain freeze. So somebody said, it's like, man, Brian, you could have made this harder. Well, this was just something we do to try to bring a little fun to the discussion tonight. So just real briefly, and anyone that's on, any of my experts, please add to the dialogue tonight. But what is a scientific poster? It's a communication tool which combines a verbal presentation with a visual aid. They're given to a small group of people who are limited in time and range of view and are informal and interactive. Posters should look as professional as your professional research. And so this is something that we'll see ever so often. We have people that kind of miss the mark on the bottom, and it's very far and few between. But if you're listening to this webinar tonight, you're definitely not going to miss the mark on presenting good quality, high content, very professional poster presentation. So you got the leg up. All right. So just a quick visual for someone that may be new to this entire experience and you've never even seen a poster presentation. This is what a typical room may look like. I believe I took this picture at one of our sessions. I believe this year, Deb, it'll be a lot more of those. So I think we said 150. So it'll be a pretty massive room of posters. Now, why do I have this little funny looking faces to the sides? Is because you kind of sometimes you don't know what you're going to get into. And so you're kind of maybe concerned going in. And we just want you leaving feeling like this. Um, After you've presented well, you feel very confident. And regardless if you win, the prizes that we give away for the poster presentation competition, we want you to just feel good about the research you've done and the quality of work that you've presented during that day. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to be quiet and put my computer on mute, and I'm going to turn it over to the experts here. We have Mr. Juan and we have Dr. Denise Yates. And I'm not sure, Nick, are you just chiming in or are you actually presenting tonight?
I'm just chiming in. I don't have any of my posters like I did last year.
Okay, so for those that don't know Nick's been one of our key contributors to the virtual learning sessions over the last few years. So we definitely value his opinion, and he's done some great presentations for us. So Nick, please do chime in, as we know you have a lot of experience with this firsthand through LSAMP and LSMRCE now. All right, so I will stop sharing, and Mr. Juan, the show is yours.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay? I hope it's...
Sound great. And the screen looks good.
Great, great. As long as I look good, that's what matters. So, as mentioned previously, I'm just going to go over what the basic elements are for a poster presentation and give a few tips on creating your poster and how to present it. So please, at the end, there's a little session for questions. So if you want to write in or video chat it, please let me know. So beginning with, okay, there we go. Components. I'm missing something. Okay, so starting off with the title, I suggest having a nice clear title that, you know, uses as few words as possible and tries to directly get to the point, but also illustrating your novelty, your in the system that you're using. And this is just a previous title that I've used before of a previous poster. As you'll see, I'll try to also point out different sizes for your fonts so you can know exactly what kind of sizing you should be using.
Could you repeat what you just said? I'm sorry, it cut out. It said you're...
No, it's fine. About the title, you know, try to use as few words as possible. Try to be very direct. Point out the model that you're using, if any, and the system that you're using. So try to be precise and efficient with what you're going to be presenting, right? The next portion, next component, and I find it to be very important, is your abstract. I use this portion to not only describe what you're going to do, but use it as a guide for your narrative flow. So just like a storyboard artist would use, you know, frames of a scene, you kind of use the abstract to really direct how you're going to present your data and how you're going to take the audience through all the information that you have on your poster. So yeah, this is the tool for you to craft the story. So just to give an example, right? An abstract normally includes a background, your methods, quite briefly, the results, which is very important, and your conclusions, as in why is this project important? How can you use this, the results that you obtained to further contribute to the field of your research? And so here's an example of how much maybe you could use. You know, there is some background to really guide you, and use the background sparingly. It's supposed to help the audience get from one point to the point that you're trying to make, right? Let me see. So yeah, these are the second. Then you'd want to use the abstract as your guide. So you really want to use those elements to really craft your poster. And now another important component of your poster is the hypothesis. Now you use the hypothesis as the opening question, as the statement that you'll use to kind of ground your audience. So let's say, for example, you now tune into the conference talk, and you're not exactly sure, but the hypothesis will help your audience understand the topics that are going to be addressed, right? So if let's say, the hypothesis here would be you're presenting the components of a poster, your audience will always be grounded to that particular subject. So it's very important to have your hypothesis clearly stated in such a way your audience, no matter what part of the poster you're at, you'll know exactly what's being talked about. But before you get to your hypothesis, it's very important to have a background. So even in this example, the hypothesis is stated up front, but you don't really understand what's going on if you don't have the appropriate background to get there. So it'd be very important, so as you're presenting your poster, to really help your audience understand all the important components of your hypothesis. So even in this example, high affinity inhibitors, you have to kind of explain what an inhibitor is and what is the receptor and what is your approach. So there's a lot to your background, and it really depends on what your hypothesis is. Then there is the methodology, right? The protocol that you're using. In this section is very important because it'll help illustrate the novelty of your experiment. Because more often than not, you're not using a commonly used method, or you're using a commonly used method for new results. And that's where your methods really come in handy. And something that I'll emphasize later is the use of graphs and diagrams to really help the audience understand exactly what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be doing it. So I'll get to that point soon. And of course, your results, one of the most important sections of a poster. Here, it's really important to try to use the figures as much as possible and avoid walls of text, which I'll also show in a bit. And then there's your conclusions. Now for this is a very important section. I'd recommend using bullet points and just try to keep your results to your conclusions to one sentence or two that really emphasize the reasoning behind your work. And then of course there's the future works and how you're going to use this project to then further advance the field. So now designing a poster. This can be very tricky, and as you'll probably experience at the conference, there'll be some people that know how to design a very well-crafted poster, and some people that should probably have attended this talk. So I want to show a few examples of what different posters can look like and what is the most effective way of presenting results and data. So here, although it's one of my old talks from now 5 years ago, I think, what I tried to do was have the abstract up in the corner for people that are really interested. They can take the time to read it. But for my use as a presenter, I wanted the poster to really be crafted in such a way I can guide people's attention. As with the introduction, I'm giving basic background to the point they can understand my hypothesis up in the center. And as you can see, I really wanted that to be the main focus point. So then when you read or see the poster beyond that, you still kind of have an idea of what I'm trying to present. And of course, there's the results and the conclusions in the far left bottom. And that's really to kind of finalize the poster. And this tends to be the flow of most posters, going from left to right, because it's easier for the audience. It's quite normal to see it this way, so it's really easier for people to understand. Here's an example of a bad one, and I love it because it's really bad. And so first problem, I think, is the placement of figures. is all over the place. There are figures that are annoying, like the one behind the text, and another problem is the walls of text. One cool point is that's kind of an example of why you should use bullet points for your conclusion, right? You know, try to keep it brief, simple, and efficient. One point that I really want to emphasize with this example as well is that you kind of want your introduction to be basic, fundamental, yet efficient and to the point, right? So if I did have, let's say, a poster on botany and I wanted to explore plant features, I'm not going to start off by explaining what exactly a plant is and using a Wikipedia definition of it. I kind of want to help them get to my research and what's important. It also doesn't help that the only result I have is a Excel table. So it's kind of the importance of having diagrams to kind of illustrate the point instead of having walls of text. Oh, and this is just an ugly poster. This is quite obviously ugly. So just for key takeaway points on visual design, you know, avoid walls of text. And a nice quote that could help is that posters help you present, not publish a manuscript. You don't want to write the next novel on the poster and hope that people like it. Really use the poster as a platform for good background, different methods, and your results, right? And try to be minimalist, but not to the extent that there's blank space everywhere. But you do want to help your audience get from point A to Z. You want to help people understand the results that you obtained, how you obtained it, and why. So those are just really good points to keep in mind. And of course, don't use Comic Sans. It's really an ugly font. Just put it clearly. Try to use something that are legible and clear, and I'd recommend Helvetica is a really good font. And the sizes, right? Don't have overly large words everywhere. Try to be concise with the wording. So, now, just to give,
sorry if I could chime in. So another thing to remember whenever you're designing your poster. So every image that you see on your PowerPoint slide is going to look great. A thing that a lot of people forget is that whenever they blow up the poster, when it actually gets printed into the actual dimensions, the 36 by 44 or whatever it is, a lot of images can get pixelated very easily. So it's important to know that you have a high enough resolution of a picture or figure or whatever you're using in order to, once you get it to full size, there's no pixelation in the figure. And then that way there's no confusion over, you know, whatever you're trying to interpret.
I think that's a really important point. If you have access to the means, always try to also print out a really bad paper quality of the poster, not necessarily in the glossy, but try to print it, you know, in a nice cheaper paper if you can afford it. And that would also help you get better ideas of the dimensions of your figures and the quality of it once it's printed out.
So a trick that you can do is you can work on it. So say your dimensions are 36 by 48, 3 by 4. So you can work on your poster at a because if you actually put your PowerPoint in a 36 by 44 frame, which you can work on it that way. Eventually, once you start adding so many figures to it, it's going to get very hard to navigate, and PowerPoint's not going to like it. So what you can do is take your 3 by 4 dimension and very much small scale it. And then once you're done with your poster, all you have to do is blow it up to the 36 by 48 size and keep everything in proportion. And then you can see whether or not you need to change a figure here or here, whether or not it needs to be a higher resolution of that figure. So that's a trick to it.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Actually, that reminded me of something that I do frequently, and it's kind of separated by modules. So if you have the full-size PowerPoint file, you could just open new PowerPoint files for just, let's say, the methods and the abstracts, and you could still keep the original, that large size, but work on just a specific module, and then at the end, you kind of put everything together, copy paste it together, and it should come out in proportion. So that kind of helps give an idea. I'm not sure if particularly, you guys can see my mouse? No, right?
Yes.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Oh, so let me see if I can get a little pointer. So you see here that I separated by columns. So then I can have a tri-column poster. Let's say, the blank canvas has just the separations. I can just grab the section for methodology, or what I plan to have methodology, into a brand new PowerPoint, work on the details there, and then by the end of it, just paste it, and it'll just help with the loading issues and all that. So yeah, no, that's a very good suggestion. Thank you so much. So now to the presenting portion, which can be very daunting. I remember that my first few times, and I still get nervous from it. It's a challenging aspect to presenting, but it's a very important one. And so please don't feel free to ask any questions for any tips or advice. So know your audience, right? Are you presenting this conference in front of peers? Are you presenting them, for faculty members? Or are you presenting it to the general public? That's a very important concept to keep in mind, right? That's when you know how to, your level of expertise, so to say, right? Are you going to be explaining very basic concepts to a general audience, or are you going to be very niche topics to an expert audience? So, based off of that information, that's when you kind of, prepare your script, so to say. So, as it says here, some people might just want your rationale, the results, or the major conclusions. And to really get an idea of what your audience is, it's very common to ask, oh, what is your familiarity with this subject? Are you a professor in this field? Then from there, you can also kind of grasp exactly how you should navigate your talk. Some people might just want the fundamentals. Some people just want to understand why you're doing this research in a particular field. Why are you interested in Alzheimer's disease or diet? And then some people might just want to know you and your ideas. So be prepared to defend your ideas in such a way that you're open to criticism, right? Because these experiences and like the conference that you're going to be attending, it's really just a helpful, constructive field, and so you should really be open to new ideas and new concepts from fellow peers and faculty members, because we all want to help each other out in science. So these are a few important questions that can help you prepare for your script and what you're going to say. What is your research about? Why are you doing this research? Why does it matter? How are you going to apply this knowledge for the field or for the general public, so on and so forth? What did you do? What was your experiment about? Well, how'd you do it? Stuff like that. What are my major results? What can you obtain from the data that you collected? And what is the take-home message? What if people just kind of want that one good sentence at the end of your talk to really encapsulate the idea and just your general focus on the project? So how to present without reading from the poster. I think it's very important for the speaker to take a conversational approach, right? Normally it tends to be a one-on-one situation. You can talk to them like a normal human being. It's not super hard. You can talk with confidence because you know what your poster is about. And one really cool trick is to kind of know the key phrases for each module. So, you already have your methodology. What is the main point you want the person to take from the introduction? And then how are you going to transition to the methods? Normally it's through the hypothesis, right? So basic concept. My main project is about finding the connection between this and this and that. And I'm going to do it by using the methods. So those are cool transitions that you just kind of gain with practice. And then know your poster well, so then you can refer to any section like, oh, how did you do this? Well, if you look at the methods section, you see that I ran this and this and that. Plan for pauses. Take your time. Remember to breathe. I should right now. So, and speak clearly and loud enough. And as you can tell, I'm also, learning these as I go along. So if your talk is too technical for the audience, also try to use analogies and metaphors. Because really, more than knowing your own project, you should be able to display that knowledge and help students understand as much as you do. Important tip. How to deal with tough questions. Now, this is a very important section. Here, it's very important to just be honest. Don't make up an answer. Don't try to fool them. What you could do is say, oh, I don't have data on that, or that's a very good question. But here's an experiment or a future project that I can do or can be done to figure out that answer. So don't be afraid to admit that you don't know. And if it's beyond the scope of your project, it's okay to say that, that you just don't know. And I think it's part of the scientific process, right? To always find that gap that you don't know and then try to address it. Oh, and number one tip would be to run the poster, practice it with your PI or your mentor. No one else will know your weak points better than the person who oversaw you do your work. And this could be the most daunting part because you know that they know what you know. And so it's very important that you can practice this with someone that you find to know more than you. I think it helps you challenge yourself and it will make sure you're confident in what you do know, if that makes sense. So calming yourself. Arrive early, adjust to your surroundings. You could watch other people present. You could do a practice run with a neighbor, a roommate. It's also good to get an idea of what you're saying to a lay audience. Because if you practice with someone who's a colleague in the same field, they can know what you're talking about, but necessarily a person without that same experience or knowledge might have trouble understanding you. And that is a weak point that you can address for your poster presentation. So it's very important for you to run a practice session with someone that doesn't know the field particularly well. Breathe. It's very important. Practice pausing and pace yourself. Take the time to go through everything calmly and efficiently. Take sips of water. Very good technique. You don't know the answer to the question, you take a little sip and be like, oh, I'm sorry, give me a second. And then you can get at it. Give yourself that time to think. Pace yourself again. Very important. And remember to smile. It's very good to look presentable and like you're happy to learn. And here are a few last minute reminders. Remember to breathe. Very important. So you might be tempted to memorize, and I can assure you that it doesn't go well. I've tried it before, trying to memorize a whole script, but when someone, in a very conversational style says, oh, tries to skip ahead before you get to, your methods, tries to say, oh, just give me your results, it's very hard for you to then navigate through your own, script in your head to that point. So it's very important that you have these bullet points in your mind for each of the modules, so then you could not necessarily have to memorize a whole script. So an important reminder is that this is your project, and no one else would know it better than you, except of course your PI and those that have helped you. But it's good to go in with that confidence that you know what you're talking about and that you're there to inform and not to be taught. It's a sense of confidence that's very important. But of course, don't take it overboard and get cocky with it. But be confident what you're saying and confident that you know what you're talking about. And especially with these conferences, what you really want to have in your head is that people are there to learn from you and are expecting you to learn from others. So it's a matter of just wanting to hear you explain your ideas. And very important is that you're a nerd and you're more than qualified for this job. So really go in with that confidence that you have a good understanding, that you're there to learn, and it's going to go up. So please, questions.
Wow, great job. Great job.
Really quickly, Juan, would you tell everybody who you are and what you do and what you're studying and where you are in your career?
Wow, that was supposed to be the first step, wasn't it? So I am, my name is Juan Maldonado, and I am right now at the University of Illinois at Chicago in the GEMS program. It's a graduate program. I'm trying to work towards my PhD, and I am currently in a lab focusing on Alzheimer's disease research. So I'm currently in my 4th year. So, having a blast. Been doing these presentations. Well, I've been doing presentations for the past 5 to 7 years now, all through college. So I say this knowing how it's like to be nervous for a presentation and being worried to make a poster presentation. So I'm happy to give these talks in order to enlighten the younger generation.
Oh, Lord.
He's growing up before your eyes, Dr.
Younger
Yates.
generation. Oh, my.
Director of the Bridge to the Doctorate at University of Illinois at Chicago. Juan is actually a Bridge to Doctorate alumnus and is one of the guys who has been instrumental in keeping the BD fellows involved in giving back. It's less of a generational thing and more of a each one kind of a thing. Always available for help, and peer guidance and peer mentoring is a really important thing, given that most students don't want to listen to faculty or administrators. So, folks like Juan on your own campuses and learn that way as well.
Because I've been there. I've been in that position. I've been new to a college program and not really understanding how things are, and ask the faculty. They kind of have this. I can explain all the details because you should probably already know this. So it's hard. It's very.
Uh-oh, we're losing
Yeah, we're
your
losing
sound,
you, Juan.
Juan.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
No, we hear more of some background noise than your voice.
How about now?
Oh, perfect.
Right. So no, I was just saying that I've been in that struggle. I've been in that position where I kind of wanted help from peers or people that have gone through a certain step, and it's just nice to kind of hear a voice that's been there recently So, so yeah, if there's anyone that wants, I don't know, more direct question with me, feel free to contact me. I wish I could write something. I could write on the general chat, I think. So I'll do that.
Yeah, people have some questions on the general chat that you might want to go through and just kind of see. One of them is like, what is the target, or what should be the average presentation length?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm sorry. Where can I see the chat? I can't. I'm sorry. These younger generations with their
Yeah, the younger generation struggling with technology, aren't they now?
It's at the bottom.
It's at the bottom.
Juan, it's at the bottom next to where your share screen was, to the direct right of the share screen button. It's a chat feature.
knowledge participants.
Ours is on the top, actually.
Yours at the top? Okay.
Reading the question. So for question length, it varies depending on what.
We're going to, yep, perfect.
So let's say someone wants to give the whole talk. Someone wants to hear the whole talk. I'd suggest like a 5 to 6 minute tops. You know, that should give you enough time to give them a good brief background, an idea of what you try to do. Methodology is important, but qualities of your methodology. You know, you ran a PCR, just kind of just say that you ran a PCR and kind of get through methodology. Results are pretty important, so I'd give a majority of the time on that, but also make sure to finish off with a really good conclusion. Again, some audience members might want just the results, and they might already be aware or familiar with your methodology, so just go results, 2 minutes, you know?
Well, so what you could do, another way to do it is you could go directly from your whatever intro that you have. You can go directly to the results, and then you can explain whatever methods are directly viable to those results as you're talking about those results, and go forward from there without really addressing the methodology section, because honestly, they can read that. It's no big deal. They can read the nitty gritty if they want. But, you know, in order to generate graph X, we amplified DNA to isolate, this particular gene of interest, something like that. And then you can talk about the result, but then you mentioned a very brief mention of whatever methodology that you did without going into the nitty gritty of it.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Something that I've, if I can dovetail on what Nick is saying as well, the way to keep a presentation, a poster presentation, in my experience, brief, is to answer 4 key questions. What are you doing? Why is it important? How'd you do it? And what's it mean now that you've found what you've found? Once you answer those questions, you're done. And then you can key into what your audience wants to know more about. But if you stick to those 4 questions, you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of the methodology. You don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of the problem statement and all of those other things. You can just simply answer those questions and you're done.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. Are there any other questions? I'm not sure.
Because we still can't see the chat for some
I
reason.
wonder if it's because of this.
One question was, do we need to include the abstract in the poster since it's printed in the program? I would say as a general rule of thumb, you want to have at least an abbreviated abstract in the upper left-hand corner.
So some places, depending on where you go, it's I don't know about this one, they will require you to put it on there exactly how it is in the book. So it's always best just to make sure that you just are going to put it on there, as a general rule of thumb. You can find ways to cut down on stuff if you need to. If you like size as being an issue, and you have too much content, but typically cutting content will come from the background section, from the methods section. But typically a lot of places will want the abstract as you submitted it onto the poster, because then people can know from their book, yes, this is the exact poster that we're talking about. Because you'll get to, so I went to a couple of conferences based on autoimmunity. And, you know, there's 30, 40, 50 posters all talking about lupus. But all of them are specific things, problems that they're addressing in lupus. So that's where the abstract comes in. It's like, okay, yes, this is abstract that matches this poster. Yes.
I'd follow that. Yeah, I agree with that. And each conference, you know, in the future conference should have information on what segment should be on your poster. Some people ask for more than just the abstract. Maybe they want more information. It really also depends on the conference, and you should be able to find that information online. Another question is, should the background be basic info on what was studied or your past experience with the project? So I'd say, you know, think back into what your audience needs to understand your experiment. So, you know, give them as much basic info as they need to get to understanding your hypothesis would be a very good rule of thumb, right? So are you studying Alzheimer's disease? Maybe just a brief, what is Alzheimer's disease? What is it known for? And what particular aspect of Alzheimer's disease you're trying to study? You know, don't give them the whole history of what was going on in the 1800s, but give them just enough to understand have context for your poster.
Part of this is, part of that, or the answer to that would be related to that second key question. Why is it important? Why'd you do it? And that'll help you to give a little bit of background about, well, there was a problem with this and we wanted to address it. No one else had ever done it. And this is why we did it. And that's really your background. So think about it in terms of, well, it's the KISS principle again. Keep it simple. So you wanna make sure that the people understand what you're doing and that you don't get caught up in the stuff that you did by trying to provide too much information that you can't really answer the questions to. You want to keep it directly related to what it is that you're presenting.
Actually, someone asked, what were the 4 questions? Maybe you could repeat them.
I think the 4 questions were, what did you do? What did you do? Why was it important to do it? How'd you do it? And what'd you find out? And what's going to happen now that you've found out? How you did it, what you found out, and what that means.
So one other small thing, it's a very small thing, but it's an important thing. So whenever you're looking at your titles and all of your authors and everything, it's mandatory to make sure that all authors' names are spelled right, because you would be amazed at how many times authors get misspelled and their affiliations of whoever, wherever they are. Another thing that on the poster, just make sure you use, kind of going back to my image comment earlier, affiliation logos. So make sure those logos are correct. Make sure those are the current ones that your university or program wants you to use, and make sure they're high enough resolution. Because it's always a bummer whenever you see just a very pixelated logo of a university on there. It's like, oh, you got that from Google. When each university, I'm guessing, has a very high resolution image that you can get from it in order to use on a scientific poster.
I think, that's a really good suggestion. I'm trying to catch up with all these questions. It's really good. Don't have much in terms of results as it's still going on, still ongoing research.
One of the kinds of posters that I've seen is a student just giving an overview of what a research group does. It has to do with what the whole team is working on. You can get that information from your PI, and you can explain to people what kinds of things you've been involved with. Maybe even tell them what techniques you've learned or what techniques are important to that particular project. So, I mean, a research poster, depending upon your level of expertise, can look like many, many different things. But just like an individual research, in an individual research project, even for your lab, if you were going to do an overview of the project, it's still, what did you do? Why is it important? You know, how'd you do it, or how are you doing it? And, you know, what are the ramifications for, or the inferences for future research based on the results that you got from your project?
And just to jump on that very good answer, I've been in a very similar situation with particularly my research when it involves with kind of a new subject, and I think it's very important to give them sort of historical context in terms of lab work, right? Because chances are your project hasn't been done in isolation, right? There's precursors to it. There's been ideas and experiments that has led up to that point. And just because you only obtained, let's say, a Western blot of, you know, in terms of data, doesn't mean it's the only blot that's been done before. And so it might be important to key in previous publications in the lab, ongoing projects from other lab members, and try to break down a narrative that explains why you have that singular Western blot. And it's not because you only had 2 weeks to do an experiment, but more of what is the reasoning behind running these experiments and why you're going to run future experiments. And a really good point is that you could also just put predictions, what you think is going to happen, a good diagram of what's going to happen. This protein is going to increase compared to this one. And, you know, it's not too far off to kind of put in what you expect to see. And, you know, that's kind of part of the process of forming a hypothesis. So, you know, it's a matter of crafting this narrative that puts into context your work and what you expect to be doing for the next few months. So it's, don't be intimidated by, you know, what you consider a lack of data, but just as sort of, you know, the starting of a beautiful canvas, you know, just to put in poetic words.
One of the things that you guys need to remember too is that there's no one size fits all. If you're a mathematician, or if you're a chemist, or if you're an engineer, or if you're a biologist, your posters are going to look vastly different from each other's. There is, you can't, you know, like a mathematician isn't going to have the same kind of results that a biologist is going to have. So you want to keep it simple, like I said, and just, you know, for whatever it's worth, you know, what'd you do? Why is it important? How'd you do it? And what are the inferences or implications for future research now that you've found stuff out?
And right, and that also brings up the point in the opposite end of the spectrum. You have all this data, you generated all these experiments, or, you know, all this data. What do you put in the poster? You don't. You don't put all the things that you've ran. You know, you don't put the log of all the different assays you ran. You put what's important and relevant to the narrative that you're crafting, right? If you did an experiment to verify that your original experiment worked, maybe not include the whole graph dedicated to that, but put a single line that says, hey, this was verified, or insert good word here, to verify the results that you ran. So it's not a matter of, let me just dump all this data on the innocent bystander that walks in front of my poster, but let me take them on a logical and a logical journey of your work. If that makes sense. So
I think the last thing that I that I would suggest is that, and this has to do with the presentation of the poster, be excited about your work. Don't stand there like a lump on a log, or you know, pretend that, you know, the Emperor's New Clothes parade is going by or something to keep yourself from getting really out of whack. But be excited about what you're doing, and so that the people that are coming up to your poster can get excited too.
And there's plenty of reasons to get excited with your own project. You know, there's all the potential that can come forward. You know, there's all these questions that you might be answering or setting up new questions, right? There's all these elements, and I think personally that's what I find beautiful about science, is that this next experiment that you're going to do is going to tell you so much and leave you with so many questions. So you know, conveying that excitement is very important. It's very important. So if there are no more questions, I think that would be the end of the session. Oh, I'll write my email, so please feel free to, you know, I can. Oh, I don't know how to write. UNC.edu. Oh, is it ever appropriate to bring materials, props, or models to your presentation? Ooh, I think that's a toughie. I'd say really look into the rules of the conference. Most conferences that I've seen don't like that. So don't bring your laptop with a video of an animation. Don't, you know, bring this huge model. But maybe if it was something hand size that you can sneak in, it's always nice.
Well, I'd say, remember, it's a poster presentation.
Yeah.
It's a poster presentation.
So that's what you have to use to articulate what it is that you've done. When you get into oral presentations, you can bring props and videos and all kinds of things. But just remember what your venue is and what you have to do to articulate your research.
Right, and to go off of that, so the point of a poster presentation is not only for you to be able to present your poster to somebody, but if you were off getting coffee, someone can walk up to your poster and know exactly what you're talking about without you even having to be there. They could get the idea of it. If they just see a random prop or a video, you know, there's not really anything that they can tell from it other than it's a proper video. Second point to that is a lot of these times you, the presenter, are responsible for putting up your poster and bringing it down. So think of all of the stuff that you're going to have to lug around in order just to get your poster there, your prop there, or whatever, you know, your laptop set up or whatever. Those are all things to consider whenever you are thinking like that.
That's a very important point. Yeah.
I think, Brian, it's all you, dude.
Also, you're muted.
You're muted.
So wait,
Before we bring it back to me, what I wanted to do was just ensure, was there anyone that wanted to ask any more questions? You can take your phone off mute and you can speak up. You don't have to type everything. If there's something else that you want to say or any feedback you want to give Juan tonight on this presentation. All right. Based off the questions, I don't even have to ask, was this beneficial tonight? That's a lot of questions. So Juan, great job.
I put in a question.
Oh, perfect. You want to just say it?
Oh, okay. So I noticed that you had like, you know, flow charts and graphs and things like that. There, those are acceptable. What about actual images that we had? Like, for instance, images of your subject, images of like basically things that you talk about, your methodology or things that you used. Are they okay to have on there?
Well, if we're, I mean, I'm assuming more of like you're presenting, let's say you're doing some type of column assay, you kind of want to show a picture of the column. If it's not relevant to the results, I'd suggest going for a very simplistic PowerPoint image, you know, just kind of draw a little cylinder and just kind of put in your methods like as part of a diagram, but not necessarily if it's if it's a single subject matter kind of image, I think.
Well, more like, okay, for instance, say that my poster were about dingoes. Is it all right to have a picture of, during my research, me holding a dingo or a dingo that we were working with, that kind of thing?
That sounds adorable, but I don't think it'd be relevant for the poster unless it's like looking at the fur of the dingo to show that it's spotted versus not spotted, and you just kind of want to illustrate that example. I don't think it'd be very relevant to the poster per se to have a picture of you, let's say a selfie of you and a dingo. It doesn't seem very relevant to the poster, I think, that you're trying to convey, or the project that you're trying to convey, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
What was that?
Yeah, to build off that, so in, what was it, my first poster ever, that was a long time ago. That was 5 years ago. So I did a poster presentation over the Trypanosoma cruzi pathogen in kissing bugs in Panama. And so it was like kind of necessary for the poster to give a picture of the kissing bugs, because people don't know necessarily what they are. And so, if you can twist, some way to where like the picture would be relevant to like the background or something of your poster, and you can talk about it, that would be great. And then you could put it on there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
It's just a thing to think about whenever you're making a poster. Space is real estate. You don't want any wasted space.
Or you don't want to crowd your poster with large kind of obstructive pictures, right? You're trying to keep it to the bare necessities. Are there any more questions? Please feel free to ask, either through voice or chat.
Okay, well, first off, I'm going to give you a round of applause. Great job tonight. I think this is going to be very beneficial for those that joined in, plus those that will be listening in through the library. Dr. Yates, thank you for having Mr. Juan very well prepared tonight. And Juan, are you at the conference this year?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
You need to be a judge. Are you going to be a judge?
I would like to fill in that role and see all these beautiful posters and see who didn't pay attention and who did.
All right. If there aren't any further questions, just real briefly, I won't take much of your time. I'll just take over the screen just real quickly. Okay, if you can see my screen, this is the agenda, and just wanted to just go through this real briefly for those that are planning to attend the conference. So Friday, October 25th, registration opens at 10:30, and I believe we'll still be registering on Saturday morning. Yes, Saturday morning at 7 a.m. as well. But on Friday, not only do we have just the registration, but there will be a couple workshops available this day, starting off with for the students, graduate and undergraduate students, I guess. Maybe graduate students can join if they like, but it's primarily for the undergraduate students. If PhD, why not me? And that'll be at 3:30 on Friday. But then also, we always have a great time with our welcome reception. So I'll get a chance to work with you guys from 6 to 8 p.m. That night. And we always have a wonderful time. We have food, DJ, just a very relaxed session, just kind of get the conference going on a very positive note. And then on Saturday, we're getting started early with breakfast, but at 8:30 in the morning, we have 8:15, sorry, we're opening up. We have our keynote. And then I believe Deb made mention last week that it's 7:30, Deb, is when you can start.
We'll have the
7
poster room opening at 7.
at
So
7.
as of
Okay.
7 in the morning until 9 a.m., you have all that time to come down and put your poster up. And you'll know what your poster number is prior to that, because when you register or when you come to the registration table, you'll have the poster abstract booklet, and in there you'll have your poster numbers.
Okay, so for those that are planning to put a poster up, you might want to just be there, as close to 7 as possible, so you can take care of that, get a nice breakfast in, and then be ready at 8:15 when we do our opening session. And then, as you see, we have 150 people presenting this year. So what we decided to do is we'll have it as an even odd session. So this is a chance for you to one, have less people all talking at the same time, really helping our judges here. But then also you get a chance to watch other people, support other people. If you're not presenting a poster, this is a great opportunity for you to be in support of someone, but also for you to learn from someone, especially if this is maybe your first time at the conference. We'll have lunch, keynote, voice of success panel, always a hit with our conference, because it's great that we can talk about what the potential is and what you can do, but then we have people that are going to be sitting on a panel that have done it, right? They've really made it through the steps that you guys are taking, and so we'll have a voice of success. And then we have another workshops one workshop that afternoon for the undergraduate students and for the graduate students as we're preparing for the resource fair. For the graduate students, after the resource fair, we're having a financial workshop, kind of something we're adding new this year, which is called Fast Track to Six Figures, which is a concept, right? If people want to make more money, great. But it's not just about making money. It's what to do with the money, how to leave a positive impact, not only in your financial situation, but for your family, for the community, etc. So this is something that we've received feedback on doing more for our graduate students. And so this is a neat workshop that I'll be doing for the students this year. And then on Sunday, we are asking people, as you're booking your travel, please stay through Sunday, right? You might be winning an award. You want to support other people who might be winning awards, but also just to finish the session and make sure you get a full weekend of networking. And then we'll close out at around noon on Sunday, and people will head back. For those that have never been to this hotel, it's a wonderful location. It's tied right next to a mall that has plenty of food options. I don't know, it might even have a movie theater or something around there. Not sure. It does. And it has a Chipotle. So it had a cheesecake factory. So good food options. But it's a wonderful weekend. For those that have never been to our conferences, it's like a family affair. No one feels uncomfortable. It's just very warm. I challenge you to come prepared, like look at the agenda, try to, make sure you get your attire right. On Friday and Sunday, you can wear casual, you can wear your school colors, etc. And then on Saturday is where we want you to be professional, for professional attire. So that takes even a little stress off your packing. 2 days of casual wear if you like. Okay. Anybody have questions around the agenda before we close out tonight? Or anybody have questions about the conference in general before we close out tonight? Okay. And you can take your phone off mute or your computer off mute if you did want to ask a question about the conference or the agenda in itself. I will double check to see, was there anything in chat, Dan? Okay. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for your time. And we will look forward to seeing you in roughly 4 weeks and 1 day. 4 weeks and a day. Well, actually 4 weeks and 2 days. 4 weeks and 2 days. All right. Take care, everybody.